Salutations to our fine podcast audience. Welcome to 3Ps and a Podcast, episode 250.
We made it.
Nice round number.
It is. Which one? 3,
2,
or
5, 0.
People
People like it when we get to the round numbers because I guess they're numerologists. And speaking of numerology, we're going to talk about one of those issues. No, we're not.
We're not going to talk about numerology, I hope.
No, we are going to talk about...
We need to stop talking about it because someone's going to send a question in, and then we're going to have to answer some numerology question.
We'll make fun
You know who was really into numerology?
Who?
Elvis.
Really?
Oh, yeah, I did know.
Oh, yeah.
In addition to peanut butter and banana sandwiches.
Well,
And Quaaludes.
and lots of drugs.
His favorite thing about the peanut butter and jelly sandwich is when you just shove some Quaaludes into it. And just get that in there to me, too.
Well, we are not numerologists, but today's question... Stop. Stop.
Don't take Quay.
No. Ed, stop it. Gosh, we're gonna really piss off all of the Elvis fans. We got tons of them.
Well, that's good because every 2 seconds they're dying.
That's
the only people left to be good.
Calm down, Grandma.
I was going to say, we lost another Elvis fan.
Oh, my goodness. We have a
When
question.
did Elvis die? 70-something?
I was a kid.
I was a freshman in college.
Oh, so 80-something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was it 80?
No, 77.
I've been
Oh, freshman in college.
I was
I
a
thought you
freshman in college.
I was like 3 or 4 years old.
said. Okay, there you go.
Good for you.
Yep, in August. It happened in August.
There you
I had
go.
just started.
Where were you, Ed?
I was in a bar.
Look! Elvis is
No,
dead.
there was no TV in the bar.
Not
No.
How'd you find
1977.
out?
My gosh.
How
People
did you
told us.
find
It was on the
out?
radio. People would come
Oh,
in.
the radio.
Yeah, people would come in.
All right.
There's no TV in the bar at night. I mean,
A
the
newspaper boy
bars
ran in and said, extra,
Let's just be
extra.
really clear. The bars in Mississippi that I went, they're concrete block buildings. There's no windows. You know?
Oh, I would so much rather talk about that than the question, but we got to get to the
We gotta get
question.
to something else.
I'm not even going to prep this
Ah,
because
I hope we cut that whole first part.
Ed, I told Ed what the question was about. He made a face. He's not excited.
It was
about
this face.
question. No, it wasn't. It was the opposite of that face, if there is one. I'm just going to read it. Here it is. This could get us in some hot water. What significance does the nation of Israel have today? I know it was the nation God used as his original covenant with Abraham, and I have been told it's referenced in Revelation as the site of the New Jerusalem when Christ returns. But is it still God's chosen nation that should be revered and supported more than others? And is it a crucial location for the end time?
There's a lot in that
There's a
question.
lot in there.
So
Let's
I
take
can say the one part I do agree with is it said something about how it was God's chosen nation.
That was
for
going to be my
Abraham.
whole answer to the whole question.
Really? Okay.
So in God's original covenant with Abraham,
That was the nation God used in his original covenant with Abraham.
yes, that part is true.
That part is
That
true.
is true.
And I guess the rest is just a question. So what significance does the nation of Israel have today? But I'm guessing they mean particularly
Has a lot-
God's plan for the world.
Certainly, if you live in the United States, it has a huge significance.
Yeah. And
We run after it all the time.
Mhm.
And I'd say if you live in Israel, I'm sure it's very significant
Very
to you.
sig-
Or
or-
at the surrounding nations.
Or, in the West Bank, boy,
That's
big in significance.
big
or-
significance there. So, but if the question is in terms, it seems like they're asking in terms of, they said crucial to God.
Crucial location for the end time.
So, with this understanding, so I'm just going to tell you my understanding of where this all came about. The current thought that goes into this question, and I'm going to try to be as non-snarky as possible.
That'd be good.
Good luck.
Okay. It all comes out of this thing of pre-tribulational, dispensationalism, which is less than 200 years old. It's basically that theology seems to hold that for most of the history of humanity, even though the Bible says we should be on the watch any moment for Jesus, it was not possible for Jesus to come back because there was no nation of Israel.
No.
Right.
And that we were waiting for a group of people who were secular Jews, most of them not religious,
Mm-hmm.
to rebel against the British government
Mm-hmm.
and to take over a piece of land, and that was the way finally that it would come about. That became popularized by a guy named Hal Lindsey, who wrote a book that was a bestseller for years. He recently
just
passed,
died.
passed
Like
away.
just a few weeks ago.
Almost everything in his book has been debunked before he was died.
Yep.
He still held on to it when he died, even though, I mean, every date, everything he said would happen did not happen.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it is still the most popular part of some, not all evangelicals, certainly not me, that think it is biblical. I would love to hear whoever said that there's a verse in Revelation that says
I
that
was thinking
Jesus'
the same-
second coming has to happen.
I was
The
thinking the
New
same thing. I'd like
Jerusalem
us to-
must take place in Jerusalem.
Charlie, can you Google that for us and then tell us what the verse
I
is?
probably am misinterpreting. Maybe I've been wrong.
Yeah, maybe I've overlooked it, but there is a part where it says the New Jerusalem, but that's not a specific location.
No,
Because
it's
one, it's new, and New England is not in England. But I mean, seriously,
You're right.
But by the name of
South
it being,
Dakota by far is not south.
south of here.
It's north.
no, but I just mean by its nature, even saying it's a New Jerusalem, and the fact that it's coming out of the heavens.
Yeah.
All of that is one, either there is a floating city that is going to come down at some point, or that already is a metaphorical language that's being used.
It's just
The part that I do want to say while Charlie's looking it up and whether he'll find something or not, the crucial location for the end times. The end times is going to be everywhere.
That's right.
right.
So this idea
Every
there is
eye
one-
will see.
Yeah, that there's going to be a location that particular piece of land is going to somehow either begin or I don't know, somehow, maybe, I guess end is another way to say it, would end this era, that once something crucial happens in that particular geography, then that triggers something that's going to happen. Charlie's got to look on his face. I would just say that doesn't make sense.
Read Revelation 21:2. I don't have a mic, so I'm not going to do it.
Okay, read Revelation 21:2. He's going to look that up. So let me finish my thought on the other thing while Jason's looking that up.
Well, we should read this Bible verse first, Jay, before you say something you'll be embarrassed by.
Well, I'm embarrassed by lots of things, even when I read the Bible. But you got it now.
So Revelation 21. Then I saw a new heaven and new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He'll wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, sorrow, crying, or pain. All these things are gone forever."
So that
None of that says
that can't be the verse they're referring to.
Because that has nothing to do with a particular city nor location.
because, and maybe this is important now that we're saying it, and I was thinking just
I just want to
As
say
I
for
was-
the question, we're not saying that's the verse you're referring to
No,
because
no.
you were vague. We're trying to figure it out.
well, and to be clear, the person said, I heard there's something in Revelation, so they may not even know
That's
what
right.
that they've heard other people say. I'll say this to help understand, and I know I made the joke about New England and England, but when the idea of Jerusalem is bigger than a physical location in the narrative and the theme structure of the Bible.
Mhm.
Sometimes you hear it referred to as Zion, or there is a Mount Zion, but then even the city of Jerusalem because it's placed there. There's this idea in the concept of, especially once the people of Israel make it to the Promised Land, that there's the city of God, and it's Jerusalem, which is the capital of Israel at the time. But if you read the Psalms, the way they talk about Jerusalem is not accurate to the actual physical location of Jerusalem, because they talk about it being high in elevation. But the mountain, which might better be said hill,
Yeah.
that Jerusalem rests upon is not even the tallest mountain around that area. In fact,
Not
from-
the highest one in Israel.
no, that's what I'm saying. But I mean, even from Jerusalem, you can see bigger mountains around
Right.
you. The idea of that is a metaphor to people in ancient times thought of gods as resting on mountains. So you can think of like the Greek gods being on
It's-
Mount Olympus.
It's
right?
why sometimes in the Bible, when it talks about tearing down false idols, it said they tore down the high places.
Right.
They often put idols and that on high places.
So this metaphor of Jerusalem is the meeting place of God and his people. And when the nation of Israel, going back to the first part of in the old covenant with Abraham, the idea was that God's presence rested in Jerusalem, rested in this physical location.
It literally in the temple in Jerusalem.
Sure, right. And so your geographic proximity to that was part of your proximity to God. But the point of the new covenant is that, and we just sang about this on Sunday, and Becky, who led our guided communion, reminds us that when the veil is torn, there's this symbolic, God's presence was already all over the world, but it was this symbolic thing of God is no longer held in temples built by human hands. He now dwells within people. And so this idea of a new Jerusalem is not saying the physical location of Jerusalem.
No.
They're bringing a new city that's going to rest on top of the old physical location. It's saying that, as we just heard there, the dwelling place of God and people, this Zion, Jerusalem location is now this completed version.
It's one of the frustrating things for me is when people give me interpretations for the book of Revelation, is that they are inconsistent in the way they deal with imagery.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
It
Sometimes it's literal.
sometimes it's and there's
Sometimes
nothing
it's symbolic.
there's nothing in the text that indicates one way or the other. I think it's by its genre of literature, it's mostly symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Almost all symbolic. But all along through history, there's been a beast that we're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody's looking for a beast. They're all
Right.
pointing to a dude,
Yeah, they're all pointing to a human
and they
being.
name the dude. And they think it's a dude. I mean, he ain't got no horns. He ain't got no tail. He ain't got no beast-like characteristics.
7 heads with 7 horns.
He's
and-
just a dude. But
There's some numbers.
then you read other imagery, and this is literally Jerusalem. Well, what in the text gave you the indication
Right.
that one was literal and one was figurative?
That's right. Yeah.
So all of this, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I am often wrong. And particularly, I have not spent my life trying to figure out the book of Revelation because I think it's fairly clear. It's a book written by a pastor who loved his people. They are undergoing intense persecution. He himself is undergoing persecution. They understand the Old Testament inside and out better than we do. They could quote it.
Mhm.
They knew the imagery available in it. He is writing to them to encourage them in the midst of persecution to hang on to their first love and not give into the empire who is trying to gain their loyalty.
Right.
That's at the heart of it. And he's telling them that God is at work. He is in heaven. The prayers of the people that they have lost are still there. He's at work, and there will come a day when all of this will be done, so don't give up. That's the overarching thing of the book. It is not trying to set a date. It is not trying to set a time, because Jesus himself said, don't be doing that stuff.
Mm. I heard somebody recently on one of the podcasts I listened to, Ed, you were talking about the imagery found in Revelation and how it was
Mhm.
readily available to the people there. It was written to them so that they would have
They knew
understood
it.
it. He said, imagine today you read a newspaper article or an online article,
Mm-hmm.
and it says, last night in a battle to end all battles, the Raptors demolished the Hawks and wiped the floor with them. He said, everybody who is a sports fan
Right.
knows exactly what that means.
That's right.
He said, now, if you had no knowledge of basketball and the sport and our culture, you would read that from thousands of years away, and you could come up with pretty much anything to say what that
Somebody
meant.
cloned dinosaurs, and there
Yeah.
were birds, and they were literally fighting, and the
And it was-
dinosaurs won.
Yeah, and he said, so that's what we're reading when we're reading Revelation.
That's right.
That's
I
right.
thought, wow, that's an interesting
Well,
way to
and
put it.
in particular, so yes, on all the context, but it also is the conclusion of the entire biblical narrative, to your point of bringing back these Old Testament themes. What is happening from beginning to end? You have it's a unified story leading to Jesus, right? And then what's happening after the narratives of Jesus is these pastors and church leaders trying to interpret how we are now to live in light of what Jesus has done. And Revelation is, and what he will do.
Right.
What he has done, what he's currently doing, and what he will do at one point. And to do this, it's using these biblical images from the Old Testament and these themes, like we just talked about with the New Jerusalem, and even this idea of a dragon and beast. That's Old Testament language that he's bringing in to talk about the struggle of sin and all these different things. And when we take that, of which I do think there's value to, as we've said, to help us understand as we live currently now in a really powerful nation. As they lived in the Empire of Rome, we live in a very globally powerful nation.
If there is an empire, we are in it.
Right. For us to live in that and to say, how do I not get so focused on the name of nations and the power of nations and become more aligned with the kingdom of God and its values? And so when you ask the question of what is the significance of Israel, when you talk about the end times, I would say very little. But when you say significance of Israel, I believe they are eternally significant to God, just as those who live in the nation of America are significant to God. And all those nations in Africa that their names change about every 20 years and their flags change every so often, all of those people matter to God. And so there is a significance to those things. But the point of what Jesus did is that empires and nation states and earthly kingdoms no longer have the final say over what God is up to in the world. There is a kingdom he has established. And though it does not have a physical location on a map, and it does not have a flag that you could pledge allegiance to, and it does not have an army that you could serve in, it is active in the world, and it is what God is using to bring about his purposes in the world. And so,
Well, the other thing I see with all of the dispensationalism and the focus on Israel and the end times and setting dates and what battle's going to be is it continues to me. It really fits into a paradigm that is a paradigm that I think has gotten the church largely off track of. So you take one or two views. Hey, Jesus is coming back, and you better decide to go to heaven. And so the whole thing is getting people to make some kind of confession based on the fear that I'm not going to be prepared when Jesus comes back, which is not at all the way Jesus talked about his return. Or it's some way of me trying to figure out how I can control and bring about the return of Jesus by supporting certain entities or those kind of things, none of which I have been told I have any role. I don't have a role to play in that. And it becomes a consuming passion, my experience. I don't know every person that does this, so I'm not trying to talk. If this isn't you, it isn't you. People I have known personally, it becomes a consuming passion that it is their focus of their life with Christ and other people. And they're either talking to people who they don't see as Christians, that you're missing out. They're focused on how they can support this thing to make Jesus come back. And they ignore the plain commands of God about what I am to be doing in my day-to-day life, which is, what is God doing in my place with the people around me? Who am I meant to touch and live? God determines the times and places. I was not born in Israel.
right.
I have a certain time and place that God decided, this is where you will be on the planet. These are the people who will be around you. And talking to them about Israel and God's plan about that is not the most effective thing I can do to love them in the way that Jesus would want me to. And I know for sure that is my most important command.
Well, and I think to that point, that is ultimately what the book of Revelation is trying to get to. It is taking what feels like, must have felt like for those in Rome who are Christians and are just trying to live good, quiet lives, loving their neighbors, serving their neighbors, sharing the gospel with people. And off and on, there seems to be more evidence now that persecution in Rome was off and on. It wasn't like
That's right.
forever there was persecution, but it seems to be at certain times it became now really painful to be a Christian. And that certainly that fear was always on the horizon of what if it becomes painful again. Those people, what he's doing is he's saying, you staying faithful to Jesus, you loving your neighbors and serving them is this cosmically important thing that you can't see. It's all wound up in this grand narrative of a dragon being cast out and these massive armies. It isn't to say that's literally what's happening. It's saying this is the grand drama that's happening behind the scenes you can't see. And to Ed's point, your focus is not to now join the army and go cast down a dragon somewhere. Your job is every time you love your neighbor, every time you share Jesus with someone, every time you serve someone who's sick or needy, you are actually pushing back the dragon. You are actually being a part of this cosmic battle that is going on. That's how we wage war. It's not these other ways. So to your point, we get caught up in these metaphors and go, I got to figure out who I'm supposed to be fighting and who I'm supposed to be supporting. And God said, I've already told you what you're supposed to do. This is what it looks like to fight the dragon. It's to love your neighbor. It's to forgive your enemies. It's to move forward and, all these different things. And that's really the cosmic drama of Revelation is those simple things.
I don't know how satisfying that answer was.
Probably not very.
Probably not very. My advice would be, if you're still interested in this question and you're struggling through some of those things in Revelation, go buy the book, Revelation for the Rest of Us by Scott McKnight. Read it and then ask questions.
Yeah.
Enough said on that one.
That's a great book.
It's a great
book.
All right. So we'll be back next week. We've got some questions next week about prayer. Lots of folks ask questions about prayer. We have some more specific ones. So I will look forward to having that conversation. I love talking about prayer. So if you do, come on back next week. We'll do it together. See you then.